supplements to getting into the best possible shape of your life. And without a doubt, there's some things that we just can't avoid. To avoid making it too complex and focusing on the simplicity of what really works, then we have to focus on our nutrition. We also have to focus on our physical activity. And without a doubt, another leg to that very important stool is sleep. Sleep and restoration. Something that is oftentimes overlooked. And when you think of those three things, they're not exclusively the only things that we should focus on, but in effect, we can build up some momentum, some real serious momentum heading into the right direction by focusing on those three things. So for example, if I struggle currently with eating properly, meaning eating the things that I should and avoiding the things that I shouldn't, if I don't know what refined foods are and the impact they have on my health, if I have a hard time eating carrots and I would much prefer a bag of Doritos, then making a simple change with regards to that is a step in the right direction. Start making the adjustment to say no to the Doritos, to say no to the overly processed sugar foods, and instead eating whole foods. This is not revolutionary stuff. The magazines and the blogs, they've all been written about all of this. And it's basic stuff. So we need to eat whole foods that come from the earth, come from the ground. And whether that be, a combination of plants and animal products, that's probably the best way to go in my opinion. But it needs to be food that in some level or at some level came from the ground, as opposed to foods that they came from the ground with a combination of things that came out of a laboratory, mix that all together, and then voila, we have some really tasty and addictive product. Those need to be avoided. And I believe in what I call the small step principle. I hate carrots today. Well, start eating just a piece at a time. Because over time, I do need to eat more carrots. Cumulative effect, by taking small steps in the right direction, the results will compound over time. And then let's talk about sleep. Similarly, if I'm struggling to have discipline to get to bed at a certain time so that I could wake up routinely at a certain time, then I have to do something. If I keep curtailing that fact, my results are going to be lackluster, right? And so sleep is just so important. And I'm not talking about spending luxurious amounts of time in bed and pampering yourself to the point where you never get up and get anything done. It's just focusing on the fact that by sleeping, our bodies get restored and rejuvenated. These are, again, just basics. So am I on my phone 5 minutes before going to bed? What does my before bedtime routine look like? Matter of fact, is there even a routine that I have? And if there isn't, then understanding that sleep is important, I may have to start taking a closer look at that, right? And making, again, small steps in the right direction. It's ultimately a game of coming to terms with what needs to change and why it needs to change, and not becoming so overwhelmed at the prospect of it, but beginning to take the steps and to get the help and to utilize the resources, pooling all of that together so that directionally we're going where we need to. The change doesn't need to be all of a sudden, but the change does need to start. We do need to begin from somewhere. And when we're talking about becoming healthy, I'm not where I'm at today because of one drastic change. And maybe in a sense, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? So what was drastic for me in the beginning may in fact was something just so small, or something so small could now be considered a drastic move But over the course of 10 years, right, of practicing and beginning to make changes in the right direction, now I look and feel and am considered to be someone who's rather healthy. But that Rome was not built in a day, not even close, right? I've struggled to do everything from learning to read labels, right? I have a mean sweet tooth. I mean, I used to start my days with a honey bun and bananas, and then maybe throw that down with a milkshake or something, And I never really had weight issues, so to speak, in terms of excess body fat or anything like that. But by golly, I was as unhealthy as the next guy, and I needed to fix that. And I started making changes. Instead of eating honey buns and donuts with milkshakes, I transitioned little bit by little bit to exploring naturally sweet foods such as dates, and falling in love with those things. Now I could easily look at a dozen donuts and just say no. Whereas before, they didn't stand a chance. I'm gonna eat them and I'm not gonna feel bad for it. And so I had to make small changes. But again, why I had to change was also important. Not just that, I needed to change, but why? I remember coming to tears, like real serious tears, because it dawned on me, if I didn't make a change, that my health, from the perspective of, I have really poor eyesight. And I know that there are people in my family who suffer from diabetes. And one of the dire outcomes that can come from diabetes, apart from death, is the fact that you could go blind. And that was one of the things that hit me, that made me realize, I have to make I gotta do something. And I can't keep pointing the finger. I can't keep playing this blame game. I don't really know who I was blaming, but it's one of those things where no excuses can stand when you need to make a life dependent, your life depends on it, change. And this started for me over a decade ago. My wife used to tell me, hey, you really got to consider what you're eating and what you're drinking. And I used to shrug it off. Like, I'll do whatever I want. I'll be just fine. And as I continue to reflect on the prospect of how long will I live for, and if I do live long, what kind of shape would I really be in? Would I be able to enjoy that life? Will I be able to enjoy the time with people that I love and care about? And then the honest answer to those questions made me reflect, made me realize that I couldn't continue on the path that I was on if I expected to have a substantially meaningful life. I had to do something. So when it comes to health and fitness, again, there's a lot of muddle out there, but just keeping it simple. And we just do not need to get overwhelmed with all the scientific journals out there, because even the experts get things so wrong that cannot be stated enough, right? We don't need to be reading all the magazines. We don't need to be listening to all the vlogs and reading all the blogs. Just know what fundamentally works. And that's information that is readily available. You could continue to check out our material that we produce with the Showed Up School of Fitness, because we made it a choice to avoid all the extra details and just focus on the simplicity of what makes a man or a woman healthy. What physical activity can look like to bring about results, whether it be towards losing fat or gaining muscle. And it's about giving the right type of coaching and the right type of education and support and encouragement towards all of that. And so don't get overwhelmed with all of what's out there. Know that it is actually simpler than it looks. But even with that being said, making small changes right now can seem drastic and can feel drastic. But start. Have a place from which to begin. And I promise, over time, there will be a compounding effect. You'll be able to look back and you'll see that there's a different you now than there was before. And in the end, that's really what matters. It's about a process. We've all heard that, right? It's about a process and a journey. And commit to the right direction and make small steps toward it. And life will be good. So stay committed to learning and digging. Just don't get overwhelmed. And I wish you the very best in your attempt to learn and grow, to become the best you possible, because you were born to win.